Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday Night Roundup here on Bloodbowl Live. Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks that we have had off. We've had a little Christmas break. Um, Monday's falling, Christmas Eve and or New Year's Day and Christmas Day falling on a Monday meant that it was not wise for any of us to be doing this rather than be doing family things. So we've had a couple of weeks off, but we're now back and we've got many fixtures to go through. And I am once again joined by two of our wonderful coaches from the ADBBL. Joining us once again is Batfink Bloodletters Tom. Tom, welcome back. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yep, Happy New Year. Yep, all good, thank you.
And also joined for one of our qualifiers. We love watching him play and we love having him on the roundup. Scott from the Flump. Scott, welcome back. Good New Year, good Christmas.
It's too short. Lots of celebrations and roses. So,
I mean, that sounds good. That sounds all right.
yeah.
Cool. We have got many games to go through. 18, I think I counted, games that we've got to go through because we're covering all the way from about the 20th of December through to now. So we'll dive straight in. We've got people to confirm who have qualified and are out and all that stuff. And we start with the Fink Mob Shambling Undead versus the Scale Marys. A game that it was so long ago now, but I was very much keeping my eye on. It was one that we streamed because the result of this would determine whether I had to wait for a wild card or whether I was through. So I was keeping a very close eye on how the casualties and things were going. There were a couple of points where it did look like it was going to be a low point scoring game, which would have been great for me because it would have meant that I would have got sort of maybe top spot in the group. But a win for the Lizards. Tom, I think the Shambling Undead, Andy playing the Shambling Undead team. The game before this, he absolutely battered me. 3-1 victory, many casualties. Dave's got many skills in that team. I think this closeness, like equal on casualties, a 1-0 thin win. I think
Mm.
probably to me it was a surprise. I was expecting a draw because Andy looked like he was on a bit of a run.
Yeah, I agree. Considering he got a casualty straight away in like turn three, I think, didn't he? So he was already one person up, one team member up. But yeah, it seems quite light on fouls and casualties. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a shame he didn't manage to make it a draw.
Yeah, I think So interesting with Dave's team is in one day he lost. In one day or a couple of days with a series of games, he lost an awful lot of his skinks that had. He had a lot of dirty player and sneaky git on his skinks, and he lost them all in a couple of days. So he's suddenly gone from dirty players and sneaky gets to jump up sprints and sure feats. So maybe that's why we saw sort of less fouling in this one. Scott, as someone who fouls a lot, I think
Never,
is the
never.
best way to call it. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, how do you sort of approach a game when it comes to fouling? Because do you just foul anyone that's down, or will you kind of be a bit more selective? Because you have a lot of spare players. Looking at Dave's
Yeah.
side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So no spares. So if you had a roster of 11, would you foul less?
Probably not. I haven't even got a dirty player or a sneaky hit on my team. I might do now because I rolled a lot of random skills. But if I get someone important down and they flip over and they're going to stand up next turn, definitely stamp on them. That's how a lot of my games have gone. There's been like two players left on the floor and they've just been flipping from prone to stunned and prone to stunned. But so I always foul. But yeah, I've got the bribes to back it up, so it was probably
That's a good
different for
point.
me. But
I think Dave went into this one pretty much guaranteed wild card. spot, but the win definitely, it secures him top place in the group. So he'll be very happy sort of going through. I think it looked, and as the person from this group, it looked initially like it was going to be quite. Um, it looked at one point like Dave was going to walk away, and then it was kind of a battle for second, and then a couple of fixtures happened, and suddenly it looked a lot tighter, and no one quite felt safe. So, um, but a good win for Dave. I think this is the only game that was played in this particular group. So we'll have a quick look at the table as it's. This is how the table will finish. So Scale Mary's top, Ducks in second. Andy will finish third, and he's got one game left to play, which will kind of help him get that wild card against Daryl, who's got quite a poor run of form at the minute, has been quite unlucky. Tom, you played Orcs last season. Shambling Undead, Strength 5 Mummies. Based on the form of the two coaches, you think Andy will get enough points for a wild card? Maybe?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. Just quickly having a look. Yeah, because he's down to what is he only got 3 big and blockers as well. So as you say, he's got his mummies on the Shambling Undead team. Yeah, the Orc team seems to have a lot of goblins in it actually. So it's not a classic Orc lineup, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll go on to our next game. Tourplay has that lovely banner at the top where you can select the last fixtures that have been played. We've got so many I can't use it, so I've got a list.
That's what I was trying to do. I was like, where are we?
Yeah. So we're well beyond it. So I have written them all down where they are. We are going to match day 6. We are going to Flumps versus the World's Edge Berserkers. Considering the season you've had, Scott, it kind of feels a bit bad that one of the times we've got you on is the only game that you've lost so far this in like a run of 9 or 10 games. Tell us about this one.
So dwarves are always difficult for me, being goblin. I think my hubris finally caught up with me. Everything I tried didn't work. Everything that worked first game didn't work. Multiple cases of my chainsaw rolling double ones on the armor break. So even with the +3, I was not getting through any dwarves. And when I finally got through the dwarves, nothing. There was many, many KOs, but War of Attrition, he beat me down and scored in turn 8 and turn 16. I just could not get a third injury. I was trying to get a point out of it, could not get anything.
It's Jamie's third season with this dwarf team, so he's sort of there's not many people in the league who have done 3 seasons back to back with the same roster, so he's really kind of got into a groove in this group. Looking at the other people in the group as well, so you've got obviously you've got the goblins, dwarfs, you've got then the rats and the Norse team. Jamie kind of needed, I feel like he maybe needed this win to just put himself a little bit above the other 2 teams in the group. Maybe even if it's just psychologically, give him a bit of a boost against some other strong coaches. Tom, but Flumps and Dwarfs now both through. I don't think either of us had Flumps and Dwarfs coming out of this group. I can't remember what you chose.
I think I chose dwarfs, but I was expecting. I was actually expecting Toxic Runners to come through and Skaven from that side of things. So yeah, it's interesting. I also noticed you took an inducement I quite like using, Scott, which is the Wild Drummer, because I use it with the Orc. Was that any good? Was that effective?
Not when you roll 1s, 2s, and 3s. The only time it came good for me was like the final drive of the game. Right. Which did push a bunch of linemen away, so I could get multiple 2-block dices on a lineman and couldn't knock him down. I pushed him around about 4 times. That was my final bid for an injury. So the Wild Drummer can be good, but I didn't get any rolls.
I think I was almost caught out by it because I did not think I I thought that you could only select the players on the line, but you can select anyone, and you can select the same person 3 times. And I
Yeah.
very nearly got caught out. Daryl used it against me on turn like 15. I I was 3-0 up, put all the skinks at the very back of the pitch, and then he rolled, and I think he only rolled one of them, but I think Scott came over and just went, if he'd rolled 3 in a row, that's both of those skinks would have been surfed, both of them. Yeah, problem. So I
Yeah.
very nearly got caught out by it. So you are through now, Scott.
Yeah.
Confirmed, qualified. Anybody you don't want in the last,
Elliot.
or any, not coach, but any team. Do you want to avoid dwarfs again? Would that
Yeah.
be the main one?
Dwarves are tough. It's hard. He even took a bombardier. He took the Piceling and Wench, who I removed quite quickly because she was a nightmare. But I don't want dwarves. I've played them a lot, and they are just so difficult for me. I've rolled random on all my dudes. I'm not sure how it's panned out, but I did get my goblin up to 18 SSP, so I've won. I've won this season. There you go.
We will go on to the next game, which is the next game. Is a shame that we don't have Scott with us, because it was a hell of a game for many reasons. And it was the Gentleman's Collective versus Wordhollow Wanderers, quite an important one in this group, which was starting to look quite tight and still looks quite tight. But it was quite a key game here. Both coaches leaving with 18 SPP, 3-2 victory for the Underworlds. A proper case of kind of gutter runners doing gutter runner things, looking at this one. So like having a little bit of a scroll through, I'm pretty sure we get a turn 2 touchdown from a gutter runner, a turn 3 stat bust. So I think even more impressive maybe that going 1-0 down, Simon won this game 3-2 with his gutter runner stat busted on turn 3, considering they can only have one gutter runner in the team. Scott's not here, so we'll be nice. You know, we will be nice. Much more skills with the Underworld team. Tom, I think it could have gone either way, to be fair, this one.
Yeah, quite right. I have suddenly seen a massive resurgence in the Underworld teams winning. I know we've got another one coming up where they won as well, and it's an interesting team really, because there's so many different characters in it, and yeah, it just looks like potentially there's some unfortunate dice rolls happening.
I mean, it was 2-1 by half time. And the second half it was 3-1 before it was 3-2, but the response from the Skaven team was quick. It looks like it's turn 12 touchdown, turn 13 touchdown, so very, very quick. Stat busted Rat Ogre for the Skaven team. That's gonna hurt. I think. Do we think on Underworld then? Why is everyone swarming to Underworld at the minute? Because I feel like more and more people are going to them at the moment. Is it that you've got? I think if you like being jammy, they're perfect, because they kind of appeal to me that I can dodge a gutter runner as far down the pitch as I want, and at the same time I can chuck a snotling down the pitch. That sounds jammy to me, so I quite like them. Is that the appeal, or is there something else, Scott?
I think if you look at the stats, because the NAF released their 2023 stats, Underworld are again top in the winnings, nearly 60%. So they are the most winningest team, and I think it's just because they have access to all the solid pieces. The Skaven Thrower, 2+2+ rerolls, gutter runners, say no more. Snotlings swarming, I believe. So they just flood the pitch and gum stuff up. And a Rat Ogre or Trolls, they've got access to so many unique pieces that you can't really plan to face them, because they're a smorgasbord. You don't know what they're going to bring, and you can, if your first tactic goes down, oh, my gutter runner's knackered. That's right, cage up and get the rat ogre and the trolls to push through. You've got so many backup plans inside that lineup.
I think also mutations on Skaven.
Yeah.
I mean that it's mad. Like being able to get things like Big Hand and Monstrous Mouth on the Gutter Runner is maddening. It's insane. Like it gets you so many strong skills so quickly. Yeah, it is incredible. There's more games to come from this group, I believe. So we won't look at that table quite yet. We'll look at all the tables at the end anyway. But this did turn out to be quite a key one because it did there was a point swing, just the 1 point for Scott, but yeah, 4 points for Simon is very, very key for him going forward. We will go. We'll fly on. We are flying through a bit today, but we do have, like I said, so many to get through. And we go to Tetanus Hot Spews. Which day are we on? Oh, we're on match day 1. Let's go to it. Match day 1. Tetanus Hot Spews versus the Iceborne Raiders. Which went the way that up until this game, the big matches in this group were going, and it was a draw. There were lots of draws from this group. They were either 1-1 or 0-0 for a long time, and then suddenly things started to turn in the last couple of weeks. A repeat of last season's semi-final. So we had these exact two teams facing off against each other, a few different skills here and there. They've played each other a lot. They're both very strong. They both know what they're doing. And probably a 0-0 draw was almost the result in the game last season. Scott, are we surprised that two heavy hitters, two blocking teams, two very strong lineups have just kind of bashed each other? I believe they didn't really leave the middle section of the pitch for the whole game. I think that's how it went. Is that a shock here?
I don't think so, and obviously we'll come to the table, but it's very tight. So a draw with a clean sheet, that's 2 points. Like I think if you're both going to take 2 points, you're not going to risk going for it. But just looking at the feed on their match, was anybody doing anything? There's like one casualty, that's it. One casualty.
Yeah, it looks a very dull game. And in the middle of the pitch, it's just push, just blocks all the way. But yeah,
it's not a surprising result because I think in that group every single point counts. So whether you get 1 or 2, you're fighting hard for those points.
And I think when the casualty, because only 1 casualty for John there. If you like you say, you're taking 2 points away from a 0-0 draw. If you risk it on the last turn and leave yourself open for them to score on the last turn, and you take none in a group where it's 3 big hitters fighting for those top 2 spots, yeah, maybe you don't risk it. I'd be interested if Scott or John are watching, whether they would agree, whether they would risk it or not, whether they felt there was that. But I believe it was kind of just a bash fest in the middle, sort of 6 lines of the pitch, and there was just not much sort of forward there. We'll talk more about their group because we have more games to come from them. But Tom, other than it just being generally uneventful on this one, I mean, these are 2 teams that I don't want to face at any point going onwards, and both of them could still finish third. They're probably getting a wild card if they finish third, but do you see either of these 2 having an edge over each other for where they're going to finish? Or is it just going to be almost luck of the draw which one gets that top 2 spot?
Well, they've all in that division. They've all got 1 game to play against each other. But speaking to Scott at the weekend, he's desperately looking at all the other divisions because there seems to be quite a few other groups which have quite a lot of games to go, and it's now every point means everything. You know, it's not just within your own group. You're looking now out of the other groups to see where the wild cards are coming from.
Yeah, the wild card race is looking. I mean, the fact that a wild card is already looking like it's going to be 13 points minimum. That's more than last season, and like you said, there's games left to play. So wildcard is going to be it's going to be very very tight and very interesting this year, and it could be quite high. The last game that I'm going to have to hunt for, and then they're a lot easier to get to after that. We're on match day 3, and we are Castlevania Bloodthirsters versus Kids Gloves. Here they are, and there's been lots of games this season have been very tight. You look at the scoreline of this one, and this maybe wasn't one of them. But Tom has done very well with these vampires. Artom, you as a vampire coach yourself, it it looks pretty comfortable. 2 touchdowns came quite late on, so it was 0-0. No, it was 1-0 at half time. But looking at it, most things it feels like it kind of went Tom's way. This.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see what his dice rolls were like on this, because I want his dice. But it seems that it was very one-sided, as you say, from his perspective. He's clearly got some of those, some of the vampires and even some of the thralls have kind of gone up in skills levels and stuff. So good on him.
Yeah, looking at his vampires, he's got. I mean, his thralls are themselves are starting to look quite decent. You know, block, fend, frenzy dotted around there. And then looking at the vampires, 3 with block and 1 with dodge, the runner with dodge. He's started to grow quite a strong lineup here. And clearly the vampires are kind of working for him. Well, just talking on Harry for a second, because Harry had a very strong start in this group, coming into it, having never played Blood Bowl before, so he had an incredible sort of start. He's got some good skills on these players as well. That some of them he's randomized, some of them he's got some he has chosen. He's clearly saved up to choose block, tackle, juggernaut, block, sure hands. So for someone who's come into it, Scott, very very new, I think he's maybe being more cautious than I think I did when I first came in, and is being quite particular with the skills he hands out.
Yeah, like when he first started, he's like, I just want to punch everything, and I was like, that never fails, especially in the chaos team. And the first few games where he was just punching and punching and punching, like it was working. And I'm wondering if, as he's getting SSP, you sort of maybe get like the blinkers, and you just like, oh, if I get this skill, I can then be more passing and agile. Maybe that's coming back to bite him in the ass, maybe, I don't know. But whatever he was doing in the first 2 games, repeat that for the last game, and I think that will the group could swing. Looking at it, like the second spot is quite sought after. So.
Yeah, second place in this one is going to be not massive on the points front. It's going to be quite low, whoever gets it. I mean, it looks a bit like also his first 2 games in this group were against Underworld and Skaven. So going into with the mindset of I'm just going to punch everything. You've got squishy things to punch as well, so that's great. It's kind of a solid tactic to throw at them. And then it looks like maybe he's then just come up against the strength of the vampires, and they've kind of knocked it back.
People out. Yeah, that definitely catches people out when they suddenly see the players and their strength 4. You're expecting to see the figures to be slightly bigger.
Yeah. I would like to mention the Castlevania team. I love all the naming of their team, very on point. Like all the names of each character is perfect. So
it is nicely done, and well done to Tom. He has confirmed. I think there's more games for him coming up, but he is confirmed as qualified. He is through to the last 16 in this group, comfortably going through as group winner as well. Yeah, I think he could, especially with kind of some of the skills that he's got on there. There's a lot of block and dodge in that team. I think he could go quite far. It'll be interesting whether his bloodlust. It would be interesting to hear from him how his bloodlusts have swung. Like, has he been quite kind of fortunate with them, or has he been quite unlucky? So that would be interesting to know, because I know I know from practice games how big a swing it can cause. So um, okay, we are now on to the games that Torplay tell us exist. So that's really that's still a lot easier for me, certainly. And we're going down to the Murderat group, and we're going to the Gilded Knights of Cerulean versus the Numpties. And I mean, looking at the score, I think Phil is probably taking this as a win because he only conceded 2 rather than 6. And I'm sure we can all agree, anyone who's conceded almost that many or that many, that when you concede that many, then you play the same guy again and there's only 1 touchdown in it. It does kind of feel like a win. Uh, but still a victory for the Numpties, who are comfortably coming out of this group. They look like they could even get out of this group stage as the highest scoring, most points. Absolutely. The thing that I would like, I don't know whether Phil is watching. I would like him to explain himself. Not explain himself. That's probably the wrong. It's probably the wrong way to put it. Tom. So I've never taken Lord Borak the Despoiler before. But looking at the star player, he's got Sneaky Git and Dirty Player on there. Quite expensive, strong, adds a lot of strength to your team. Clearly, now has Phil just got unlucky here that he's taken an expensive star player that is meant to foul, and they fouled on turn 2 and been immediately sent off? Is that bad luck? Because I think it must just be bad luck.
Yeah, it's kind of that case of putting all your eggs in one basket, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's because clearly he had a lot of additional inducement points to put in there. I don't know what Lord Borak's cost is.
250, I think, 260, because he got a team mascot as well, and that was 290k all in. So that must be 260k.
So and I'll come to it a little bit later. But I took a mercenary in my game, which is a fowler, and for only 110, I think he is currently, and he's got exactly the same things. So he's got Sneaky Git and Dirty Player +1. You know, I'm now with my team. I'm thinking more with inducements rather than, as I say, putting all your eggs in one basket and get one of those superstars. I'm thinking of maybe having a couple, maybe having even a few kind of brews in there, something along those lines. But I think that's a very unfortunate one on turn 2 for your star player to be sent off.
Yeah, I mean, because you can have your star player beaten up on turn 2, turn 3, and getting taken off the pitch, and it's like, okay, well, the dice have done what they want. It just felt I was following it because I was interested to see what was going to be the result of this, considering what the previous game was, and just saw that come up on turn 2 and just thought that hurts. That does hurt. Looking in the chat, Elliot's mentioned that it was nearly 3-0 to the Numpties, but Phil defended quite well and managed to hold it off and then ran away to get the touchdown. And we've got also, I think it's Tom in the chat saying that Sneaky Git and Dirty Player doesn't mean you go for the fouls with him. He's good at sort of bashing and hitting stuff as well. Yeah, I wonder whether you take, because Scott, you take various things that can get sent off very quickly in your team, but you also take a lot of bribes. So would you take? I mean, I feel like I would probably take Borak and be with that money, I'd be too afraid to foul with him. Do you take him with the intention of fouling, but only if you've got so much money you can also take a bribe as well to avoid this scenario?
Yeah, if you're worried about losing a set piece for fouling, try and bring a bribe. Obviously, a bribe and Lord, whoever, that's going to be, because they don't have bribery and treachery, so that'll be another 100k. So that would be 360k off the top of my head. That's a lot. You might as well get like Morg at that point. So, but for me, I always make sure I've got bribes to at least cover one drive if it goes wrong.
Mm.
Because then maybe I can stall. Maybe I'll get lucky on the dice, arguing the call. So, but yeah, I love bribes. If you can bring a bribe and you want to foul, bring a bribe.
And the worst thing is that because he went off in turn 2, he also took away a reroll as well because he comes with a free reroll. That's his special skill.
Can he not re-roll his? No, you can't re-roll those dice, could you?
No, it's
No.
basically his special rule is a team that includes him gains an extra team reroll for the first half of the game. If it's not used in the first half, may get carried over the second half. However, if Lord Borak is removed from play before this reroll is used, it is lost.
Oofed.
There's a bit of a double whammy.
Painful. And looking at the way the game went after that, turn 8, a dead lineman for Phil, a badly hurt Bloodseeker, a badly hurt Corn Gore comes up there as well. So actually, looking at the way the first half went. And I know that Phil was quite happy to have only conceded 2 and to have scored against Elliot. I wonder whether Elliot was happy with this or disappointed it wasn't 3-0. It looks like Phil sort of had almost an underdog spirit pushing him to try and get something. Didn't come out of the game with any points, but certainly, yeah, Elliot so disappointed that it wasn't 3-0 and it was 2-1. Yeah, I think we said it before. Based on how strong Elliot is with this dwarf team, how skilled it is, I think the other people in that group, if they look at it as you're not going to get points away from Elliot, so get them elsewhere, I think that's where my mindset would be in this one. We will go on to the next game. We're back into the group of Kid Gloves and Wordhollow Wanderers. Before this game, it looked like Kid Gloves were kind of your best bet for second place, and then Simon goes on a bit of a run with a 2-1 win here. Still a point for the Kid Gloves because they do manage to get 3 casualties out of it. This will have been a game where Simon would not have had his gutter runner because they were stat busted in the previous game. So actually, as they are your main scoring threat, he gets a couple of touchdowns here. The thrower gets one. I guess the sure hands is pretty good, and the blitzer gets one. So 2 good players to score for you to get that SPP. Tom, we'll go to you first then. What's your kind of this to me? This game showed the kind of swing turning and the agile teams who had done quite poorly in this group up until this point finding their footing a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting to see that Fungus the Loon was taken by Simon, and he kept him in reserve until the second half. I often find that's an interesting play. You always find that people who bring in star players almost put him straight onto the pitch on turn 1, but to hold him back, get a lay of the land on the first half to see how it's going. And these ball and chain players sometimes cause a lot of damage, sometimes hurt themselves, but again, not knowing how to play against these kind of players can be a real advantage.
Yeah, I guess I've seen Simon do it quite a lot, and when I think about it, if you start to lose players early on, and you've got someone on the bench for the next drive, I think it maybe gives you a bit of kind of like a morale boost if that boost that you've got, especially with the Underworld team, that boost that you've got isn't a Snotling, that boost is a Goblin with a ball and chain. You're kind of like, oh well, have you hurt him? No worries, let's bring this guy on. Scott, you're no stranger to Fungus and to Ball of Chains and things like that. I guess you have access to quite a lot of different secret weapons and things like that. Do you save some for later? Do you kind of almost like ration when they come on, or do you throw everything at it on turn 1?
pretty much have as many as I can on the field at all times. I have kept the chainsaw back. Keep him on defense as like a safety, because if anything comes running down the wing, he's in the backfield. He can just run up and chainsaw blitz. So I tend to keep him off if I'm not on offense, but always at least 2 ball and chains out. Double chainsaw on defense is hilarious. So, and I have found that if you send your ball and chain into your own players and they have dodge, you can just push them, and it's a free move basically. So I've been doing that last few games, just crashing into walls of goblins and pushing them around, rather than going for the offensive hit on the blockers.
Mm.
It's quite fun. It's quite a fun little thing.
It was also clearly good that looking at the timing of the touchdown, Simon must have had enough players that he didn't need to bring on Fungus the Loon on turn 7, because that always sucks when you've got, especially like a secret weapon, and you have to bring them on for one turn at the end of the half. If you then don't have a bribe, that's quite painful if you're then immediately going to lose them. So maybe he did come on and rolled to argue the call successfully, but yeah, good that he managed to keep him so that he could do some damage in that next half. So yeah, a win for the Underworld there. Do we have what other game? I think we do have further games in that group. We do, so we'll wait till we get to that one before we go over that. That was kind of that looks like that's kind of the start to the Agile teams coming back in that group for that fight for second after Tom's taken a bit of a run to the lead. We will go to our next game, which is Toxic Runners versus World's Edge Berserkers. So, Scott, we are back in your group. And that the win, I think the win over you by the dwarves seemed to kind of give them somewhat of a boost, and they then go on to beat the Skaven team, which I did wonder. I did feel like this game, kind of whoever came out on top would give themselves a real platform to come and kind of not necessarily challenge you at the top, but at least kind of get towards you and join you in second. And Jamie's had a great game against the Skaven.
Yeah, I was watching this one because I really wanted the Gutter Runners to beat the Dwarves. 2 reasons. Dwarves beat me, so that's no fun. And secondly, I really want Graham and his rats to do well, because his dice rolls have let him down at like on the touchdown line. Nuffles tripwire's got him like 4 turns in a row against me, stuff like that. The scores and his results don't match how he's been playing.
Right.
And then everyone just smashes him to pieces by the time the second half comes around, which is how this game went by the look of it. And yeah, it's just the war of attrition really caught up towards the second half and deep into the end of the game.
Yeah, he's taking 2 journeymen into this game immediately. He is taking Creek in as well for an inducement. Gutter Runner scores on turn 4. Gutter Runner gets badly hurt on turn 4. And yeah, looking at it, he's, I mean, 3 casualties for the dwarves. Creek is sent off on turn 13, so at least he made it that far, I guess, is a good sign.
Yeah.
An armor value busted journeyman is in there, a niggling injury lineman, an actual lineman in as well. Yeah, Graham has suffered fates that we've seen in previous seasons where he's been beaten to hell early on, and maybe kind of like it is difficult to recover when you lose 3 or 4 per game. It is really kind of tricky. Graham is in the chat. Couldn't break the dwarf armor. The Gutter Runner also rolled a double 1, leaving the ball for a dwarf to score on turn 16 with a rush. So yeah, I mean, you look at it, and the dwarves equalize on turn 13 and then score on turn 15. So it is quick scoring dwarves, which we've seen a lot of this season. Tom, dwarves are having a good run this year. I don't really want to face either dwarf team, I think, at this point. Are you surprised at all by this kind of. There's not many kind of all out and out Edge teams in the league, but the Edge teams are really kind of struggling. Generally, kind of across the board. Are you surprised by that?
I think the nice thing is that all the groups are quite evenly matched. You know, it's like this group, for example. You've got two Edge teams in there, but you've also got the Dwarfs, and both Dwarf teams are both seasoned players. They've played them multiple times, both in league and in tournaments, so they know how to play those teams. Um, I think sometimes it's unfortunately the roll of the dice, by the sounds of things in this scenario, it was as well. So you've got to bring that into context on this. It's interesting to see the variety of teams and where they're coming in. Some of them later on, I was quite surprised on again with another underworld team doing very well. And you say about agile teams not doing very well. We've got an elf team in our division that's done very well in the up and coming games.
Yes, you're right. Actually, yeah. We'll get on to Justin's big win later. Yeah, definitely the momentum is with the dwarfs at the moment. So we'll see how they go. And you're right. Actually, when you look at the results. Looking at Jamie's wins for the Dwarfs here, 1-0, 2-1, 2-0, two draws there. Like they are all quite close results across the board. Yeah, I mean, this group has
Fun.
been really fun to watch, and I mean, Scott, clearly fun for you guys to play in. Um, we will move on to the next one, flying through now. I just need to remember where we got to. So we got to that one. So we're back to the group of death, and finally the group of death doesn't give us a draw with one of the big teams, and we've got the Iceborne Raiders losing 2-0 to Dead Star Belgrave. Going into this game, John and Scott with their teams were kind of your teams hovering at the top of the table, and Dave was sort of lingering down, having to be fair to Dave, having not played Jane, who's kind of been the player who's taken a bit of a beating in this group, hadn't played Jane much yet. Um, but he comes into this game, and if Dave or John are watching, I'd love to hear kind of how it went, because it it looks brutal from the get-go. Ghoul runners fouling left, right, and centre, getting sent off on turn 2. Zombies doing loads of fouls. And I wonder whether there was kind of a swing in this game, because it was it looks to me, knowing these players as I do, that a Ghoul runner, who I've just noticed is called Robert Lewandowski, and I love it, scored on turn 8, and I wonder whether there was a decent amount of fouling to stop people kind of catching up, and an element of stalling. John will have not. It wouldn't have been great for John to lose a Valkyrie on turn 7. That will have hindered him going forward. It's a turn 8 and a turn 16 touchdown with two strong coaches. It sounds to me like some stalling may be going on, but I'd be interested to hear if that's not the case. 2-0, Tom, can often look like it's more of a dominant win than it is. But also, to stall all the way to the last turn twice does take some doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's an interesting one because he took Ivan, the Animal Death Shroud, as a star player as well. But you don't really see him in the actual results. I'm interested to know how effective these star players actually are. Are they almost like a psychological thing? Because they've got I believe he's got strip ball. So has he kind of come in and caused a bit of mayhem, really?
I'd be interested to know. I'm going to quickly see if I can find what his special skill is, and
He doesn't
whether
like dwarves.
that.
He don't know. He definitely doesn't like dwarves. He gets an extra +1 on Mighty Blow, I believe. So he goes +2 against dwarves. if I'm not mistaken.
Dave's in the chat. He said that he went ghoul heavy. I think that means ghoul heavy. To get the numbers up over John and targeted the Valkyries. Yeah, the Valkyries. If you can take them out, they are kind of your go-to ball carriers in that team. So it seems like that's kind of gone well. Scott, I mean, I think this is something that you'll be quite a good person to ask because you play as a team who is normally you are kind of numbers up on the opponent because goblins aren't overly sort of expensive to replace. If you need the spares, you can have the spares. So can maybe deal with attrition a bit better. Is that like that seems to be what Dave's tactic has been here, and it has worked well. And it's something I've kind of paid attention to as well, trying to always make sure I've at least in a position where I've got more players if things go wrong. Um, is that kind of almost as is that as big an advantage to be able to not worry about players going off as bringing star players and things like that in?
Yeah, there's been a lot of plays I've been doing this season that I wouldn't have done last because I didn't have a full roster last season. So I took trolls and doom divers and all that shenanigans. But just running expendable little gobbos to keep the numbers up, it's like, okay, well, I've got a slight break here, but I need to man mark every other player. I'll put them toe to toe. I know they're going to get smacked, but it's fine because I've got more in the box. Like, it's fine. And it has been working until it doesn't. And then even with my numbers, if I get absolutely smashed to pieces, I break. I'm paper thin. So it's a great tactic. The numbers game helps the psychological side of it for sure. You're not too worried about losing one or two players. So it's nice to have a nice substitution box full of people.
Hmm.
I wonder, Chris, would you find it also if you're playing against them a bit of a psychological thing of I'm trying to clear the pitch, but they just keep coming on.
100%.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because I always look at it like I think I foul more now than I used to, but I try not to foul unless I want to always be at least level on numbers player wise. So I'll foul more if I'm a player up. But I will then maybe not do that if I'm looking at the subs bench and I'm like, well, yeah, he is 2 players down, but he's also got a bench of 5 and I've got no one. So yeah, I think it works both ways for me. I feel better if I've got the numbers, and I definitely worry more if I don't. Um, Dave's also said John kept away from Ivan so that he didn't do much to help. Didn't do much in the game, but helped with the kind of general control of the game. I guess, yeah, having that kind of scary star player that you can chuck somewhere on the pitch to linger makes your opponent think I need to do something to kind of mark that off. So it is a good kind of swing there. So a big game in that group, that one, because at some point someone in that top 3 had to break somewhat, and it turned out it was Dave managing to break John. And credit to Dave because they are 3 incredible coaches, 3 very, very strong coaches, and Dave is the one who came in without the redrafted team. The skills that John and Scott have are miles long. Dave came in with not as many skills as that and has been the one to break the deadlock in that battle. So really well done to him for that victory, and he's looking pretty good now, looking in a good place in this group as well. We've got more games in that group to come, so we'll move on to what I think. Oh, it's still not our last visit. I mean, clearly Nixon Group just spent Christmas playing Blood Bowl because we've got even more games from them. And we've got the Gentleman's Collective 2-1 win over Chaos. Again, the Edge in this group warming up a bit and getting the better of this Chaos team that Harry's brought through. No points for Harry in this game, but a solid 3 for Scott's Skaven team. Looking at the way the game went as well, he went a touchdown down and actually didn't equalise until turn 13 and then got a quick response again on turn 16. So he's done well to then kind of break the serve in the second half to bring that back. So we've got another instance in this game. not
Brutal.
yeah, not quite the same as. It's the same level of annoyance, but he's not gone from a foul. He's been killed by the Minotaur on turn 2. Um, we've talked about how much that sucks, but I think Scott, it's probably easier to swallow if they're killed rather than sent off. Probably.
Yeah, because I'm not familiar with that star player. Is that the big nurgly looking dude? Is that the
The
one?
big rat, big fat rat.
Yeah, and he gets like frenzy blitz or something.
That's it.
It's not one that I've used actually.
It's a strange one, but he looks fun. And he's a big boy, so to just have a Miles the Minotaur, who seems to be Kid Gloves' like go-to player. Just deal with him in turn 2 is brilliant, but very annoying for the opposite coach. I would be devastated if I lost all my star players on turn 2 or 1.
Definitely Miles. I mean, for a big guy, first season big guy, and he's got Ironheart skin and Juggernaut straight away, which is fantastic. I don't know whether Ironheart skin came from something else, but I might be thinking of a different player. So a good couple of skills on that Minotaur off the bat. A high team value, actually. I didn't notice how high the team value was that Kid Gloves has, which probably has helped sort of with these other players coming in. Scott needed this win, Tom, because he was sort of not in the best place going into this game. Not many points going into this game. Needed this one to try and sort of get towards second place. Wasn't a big tally, but needed a kind of boost to get close.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, he obviously suffered the same fate with Glark going off, and maybe that gave him a bit of a impetus to try and knuckle down and try a different route. By the looks of things, he started playing like Escape from playing like Escape from People do, and not going for fouls and not going for tackles, but just playing quite quick ball by the looks of things. Because after that, after the equaliser, it all goes a bit quiet, really, and it's all the casualties and fouls are all on the Kid Glove side of things.
Yeah, I mean it was a good result for Scott, who I know he's not here to kind of back himself up, but I know that he was going to try and choose skills as the season went on this time, and then like me, the man can't resist a random, but he's done pretty well with his random skills. Brawler and break tackle on the big guy, pro and tackle on a Claret lineman. Catch on a gutter runner, I think, is great, especially when you start to get some good skills on your thrower as well. Leap on a gutter runner is fantastic. Block on a gutter runner is great as well. That's one that he has chosen, to be fair. But he's done well with those random skills to kind of build a strong lineup. A good team, a good lineup to redraft. I think he's sort of in a good position that he can pick the right guys here to bring forward to next season. So and some SPP there that will come with him as well. So that's really handy as well. I don't think so. This game hasn't the loss here for the Chaos team hasn't knocked them out, Scott. They do need a good result in their final game against the Vampire team who have walked away with the group. They need 4 points and they need to have a better touchdown difference than the Wordhollow Wanderers to get through. Harry's done phenomenally in his first season. Is that too much of a stretch, or do we think he can pull it off?
Probably going to be in a better position going into this with the other team already qualified, because they're going to be thinking of the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to go in and go toe-to-toe and risk injuries and all that jazz. So they might play quite calm and defensive, maybe not try too many risky plays, leave yourself open for counter-attacks. It might work in Kid Glove's favour. Then, the bloodlust might not help. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to definitely keep my eye on that. But I think, because I had it last season against David Rue, I needed 5 points to get through, and it was right there until one dice roll, and then it ended in a 1-1 draw. So it's It's doable. It just depends how your opponent's feeling, I guess, because David was very much in that against me. He didn't want to engage and lose people for the playoffs, but he did, and you're welcome for that, Chris. So
Yeah, thank you. It helped me a lot.
Because I'm in the same boat. I am thinking about the next match, and like I keep looking at my team. I got players missing. I got rubbish skills. Fend. That's not good. So I'm thinking of like sacking half my combos and just bringing fresh dudes in. It might be detriment to where I am now because I'm thinking too far ahead rather than what's in front of me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because like they've both got the same kind of team value, so there's going to be no additional inducements. But for Tom's team, he's got quite a lot of kind of skilled up thralls. So it's a double whammy for him, Kid Gloves could take him out, but also his own team could take him out. It's all on the roll of the dice next time.
Yeah, it's something I hadn't overly thought of, but it's a very good point that if Tom's got more to lose than Harry in that last game, so that could be the deciding factor, can't it? We will get to the last game that we've got in that group for this week, but first we're going to jump back to Scott, to your group, and we're going to go to Odin's Ravens versus Roger Berserkers, a game which JD I know is in the chat, a game that JD probably needed a good result against, and I think he has maybe met the dwarf team at the wrong time. That's kind of how I feel, is that he has met this dwarf team when they've been on a great run and just kind of hit them in their stride and unfortunately taken that hit. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, it does. Looking at it, does feel that way. Like Odin Ravens had only 400 gold, 400k worth of inducements. It's a massive team difference there. The weather, sunny, doesn't help with the passing game. So JD's Valkyries, even with their skills, it's extra dice and extra hazards you don't want to roll against. That coupled with the dwarves, I didn't injure any dwarves. The Skaven didn't injure any dwarves. They were farming off of me and the Skaven 2 previous games. They are skilling up. They are scary. They got a lot of punchy abilities, and their runners are deceivingly fast when they get a bit of space.
He had to take 3 journeymen in this game, and looking at the inducements he took, something that I've been tempted, I haven't done it, but I've been tempted to this season at certain points. He's gone for a Valkyrie mercenary rather than any particular kind of skilled up one. So he's just spent the extra money just to replace the existing positional. Tom, would you do that if you had the money to, especially I guess with your vampire team, because you've got not a huge number of positionals, sort of very specific. Would you, if you needed a extra player, would you consider just taking another vampire, a merc vampire, just to kind of, I guess, keep the way that you play pretty standard, especially if one's just out for a game, maybe?
Well, in my game, I actually took one of the preset mercenaries that we've got, and I took the dirty player one, and it gave me a new kind of angle on my run. So for me, I like those mercenaries that have been preset as a different alternative, because I wouldn't take an extra vampire because that's just another player to bite more of my players in my mind, and just give me a bit of something you don't have to roll to move, kind of thing.
I guess it's more high risk for you because of all the bloodlust. I guess for JD, less high risk to take the Valk Merc than it would. Yeah.
I personally on this game, I think JD should have gone one up, because I think it's bad sport killing a poor defensive beer ball in the first turn. That's not on.
That's unfair. It's Christmas. Clearly, they just wanted their pig in blanket. So, but I just seen JD in the chat. He reckons he should have took Morg instead. And I mean, I don't think anyone's taken Morg this season. Like, I've been able to, but my self-induced stunty rule means I'm not. So
yeah, I mean, kind of, it's weird. My reaction is like credit to Jamie for taking out the boar, because the amount of times I've played Norse and I've tried, and because they're like snotlings, you just sweep them around and they never go anywhere. So I'm kind of like, well done. It's kind of my reaction, because I've tried so many and I can never get rid of them. Um, but it was quite a late touchdown in this game. Looking at it, turn 14 touchdown for the Dwarf runner, which looks now has block and tackle on them, which is just horrible.
The whole
Uh,
team's horrible. It's just block, tackle. Like, oh, can I use this skill? No. Can I use this skill? Of course you can't. We're dwarves. Like,
a close one, and I think they have got one more game left to play, and that will be an interesting one because. Like we were saying before, Jamie has qualified. Jamie is through. JD has nothing to lose. So will they play? Will this game have a different result in the second matchup? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether it will. I know JD will be going for blood, and yeah, how much will Jamie try and protect what he's got to give him a good playoff run? I don't know.
I'd bring as many chainsaws as you could, JD. There's a 30k Sunny mercenary. Bring him, and just bring as many anything with claws, anything with chainsaw, anything that gets through nice tough armor. Just flood your field with that. Well, I'm not biased at all. I don't have a vendetta against the Wolves or anything. But yeah, I do feel it's going to be the same with the kid glove situation. One team's qualified, one is nothing to lose or all to gain. So just go out swinging.
So we'll go back to Nixon, our last visit to Nixon of the week, and this was the game that it was Scott's last game, and it was the game that he needed. I think he needed 5 points to match or beat match or beat the Wordhollow Wanderers. And he got credit to him. He got the 4 casualties out of it, but he did succumb to a 2-1 loss in the end against the Vampires. Looking inducement wise down here, it looks like actually team value wise, maybe they were pretty level going into this one. Yeah. Pretty much identical actually, so no inducements on either side. And he gets off to a really good start with a niggling injury on a lineman on turn 1, which is great. The Rat Ogre getting some good hits in, getting some SPP, and scoring in 2 turns. If we just stop there, and Scott may like us to stop there. If we just stop there, it's a great game. Vampires very quickly come back. It's 2-1. It's 2-2 by half time. And then things start to kind of swing by the looks of it. We get some stat busted linemen for the Rats, and by turn 13 it's 2-1. And by that point, it's going to be difficult because you haven't got your clean sheet long before there. It's going to be tricky to get those 5 points that he would have needed. He'd have needed to 1-3-2 to get those 5 points. Tom, sadly, Scott's season over, but a good squad to maybe redraft and bring back. I think, as we said before.
Absolutely, yeah. It looking at the actual timeline along the top, it looks all over the place. It looks really full on, and his signature seems to be scoring a touchdown on turn 2. I think this is like the second or third that we've actually talked about where he scored on the second turn, which is excellent. Unfortunately, just quickly looking at the teams, I don't know whether it was the fact that it was. He only had 11 rats against 13 vampires. So again, the idea of once you start losing players, you can't field any more out of the reserves box, things start to fall apart, unfortunately, and especially when you're playing against a team with a number of agile strength 4 players in their side. it starts to get a little bit difficult, unfortunately. Although, hats off to the Rat Ogre. I think he caused a couple of casualties.
I think also because I had rats last season. Scoring quickly is easy. It's so easy because you dodge out of places on twos normally if you can break the path and you've got movement 9. Lovely, wonderful thing to do. When you like we talked about earlier, you've got 11 players, they've got 13. You take out one. You take out one of their players on the pitch in turn 1. You score in turn 2. You almost don't feel the benefit of being up on players.
Mm.
Scott, is there an argument to trying to stall on that touchdown and making the most of the player advantage to try and take more players out so it's easier going forward?
Yeah, I can see that would work. The one time I tried that against JD, I had an easy 2-0 win. I was like, I'll just hold fire. I then fell over, and JD ran the length of the pitch in 3 turns, and it was a 1-1. So, and he had 3 players. I had like 10 on the pitch, So even with the numbers game, I fluffed it there. But yeah, having more players and stalling if you're in a safe place to do so, viable tactic by all means. And the Skaven team, I think if they get redrafted, they're going to be strong. Like Rear Admiral Redensaw, he was just farming points this game. I think he got like 6-7 points this game without MVP. So he looks like a future scary player. But...
There's some good ones there to bring back, and I'm sure Scott will. And a good kind of a good selection, I guess, of skills that you can kind of pick and choose which players you want to return. Tom, I think he'd cemented his qualification before this game, but takes more points from it. He's sitting quite nicely up near the top. And like we've said, I guess his only worry now is not kind of losing out to any damage that he might take from the Chaos team in his last game. Would you so I guess this is another kind of interesting point then. He's on quite good form here. Win-win, draw, win-win. Would you take a loss in game 6 if you lost because you played as many unskilled players as possible and you tried not to put your skilled guys on the pitch and that lost you the game? Would you be worried that you've lost your momentum in doing that? Or would you not care and just be happy that you've got a full roster going into playoffs?
It's interesting because looking at his lineup, he's only got 4 thralls that don't have skills. So you clearly your TV is boosted by the fact that you've got 1 thrall with fend and shadowing, which is at 60k, and another at block. And again, as with these vampires, I'm learning you're playing against 2 opponents. You're playing against the person you're playing against and the dice on the bloodlust. And I know you can take your players out and they'll only be badly hurt. They won't die. But again, I don't know. It's a difficult one because you potentially think, well, I'll just play for a loss or I'll just stall a bit. It's a tricky one because I suppose you can look at it that way. Alternatively, you can look at it and go, well, let's just use this as a training session, not being rude to the opponent, because it's kind of guaranteed you're going through and that they're unfortunately not. And they can't really make the numbers up to kind of get into the playoffs themselves. So I think it's going to be that situation where people who've got nothing to lose just target the best players just for the glory, I think.
Looking in the chat, Dave Rue is going for a full roster in the playoffs. Would much rather prefer that.
Just seen Jamie's comment.
Jamie's going for step up and kick the shit out of them. And actually, it sounds like that's the way that Tom's going to go. He's going to go for getting into playoffs undefeated and really take the fight. So that's going to be a great game to see because someone who's taking the fight regardless and someone who's got nothing to lose could end up with a really interesting matchup. Uh, okay, powering through then. We have got 6 games left to go. Here we go. We're doing well. And we're back to your group, Scott.
Oh,
Um,
here we go.
and um, sadly for JD, I'm sorry, JD. It's unfortunate for yourself because I think this game probably needed to go your way more than it did the Skavens team. But Graham finally got the break that maybe he had kind of been fighting for all season. 3-1 win, 15 SPP. Um, things finally went his way, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, all season long so far, this game have been kicked like a lot. There was very much splat the rap was my game plan into both of our games. So I think with the players that did survive and made it to the final game, they're skilled up, they're ready. Graham's learned his team, learned what to do against the punchy types, and looking at the feed, just sort of just ran with it and just kept running as gutter runners tend to do. I think.
It started bad because it started immediately with a thrower badly injured off the pitch, and you kind of thought, oh, okay, we're here again. And then Tom immediately turned a corner, 2-0 up. Looks like by half time, and things suddenly going a lot better.
Yeah, that the way it reads just looks like a classic Skaven game. That's where just touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And again, is it the fact that he's got 12 players in his team? He's got that, still he can take an injury, but he's still got a full team.
It looks like JD. So Graham finally was just succeeding on dodges. When you gutter runners keep failing dodges, when they're dodging on 2 up and you keep failing and you've got a built-in reroll, it's so demoralizing. It really is when it keeps happening. JD, I mean JD could still JD a win could still get him through to playoffs, but JD is already committed to not bringing back this Norse team next season, and looks like possibly Khorne or Chaos Chosen possibly being his route, I guess, back to beating the crap out of his opponents, as he's done previously. Yeah. I felt sorry for JD because I think even going into this game, JD was the one who had the better chance of progressing and kind of taking the fight and maybe getting a wild card out of this group. And then yeah, clearly these team have kind of met each other at the best and worst points for each of them because Odin's Ravens may be on a bit of a slump, having lost. Drawn to Flumps, lost to World's Edge Berserkers, and then Graham just getting the luck that he hadn't been getting. So, but JD still got a good. JD can still. He needs a good result against the Dwarfs, and he could still fight for that wild card. We said this about someone else. We asked whether it was too much uphill for them. So we'll ask the same question here out of fairness. Does JD have too much to do, or can he pull off a wild card grab here?
He could potentially pull off a wild card. Looking at the skills that they've acquired, that's a pretty agile team. Things like running pass, accurate, sure hands. And you're playing against dwarfs next. Did you say?
Yes.
You've got some, and also you've got quite a few little things that you can be quite nimble and play almost elfish against the dwarfs, rather than trying to take the fight directly to a dwarf team. It's never gonna come off pretty.
Yeah, it's. I mean, wildcard currently is 9 points. I don't think it will stay there, but it's currently 9 points. JD's on 6, with a game to play, so he can finish on 12, and 12 got him wildcard last season. So it's still. I think it is still possibly there. But it looks like JD is going for blood. And when JD goes for blood, he gets it.
The dwarves are through, so are they going to want to go toe to toe, or are they thinking about the next round?
That's true, actually. So if JD commits to an agile game, he may not face much of a kind of punchy resistance out of kind of wanting to protect yourself.
Mm.
But having said that, Jamie has said step up and kick the crap. So I think
Yeah,
I
he needs. Well, he said it. If he doesn't, if he's not
so,
engaging in three dice uphill blocks, I'm gonna be very disappointed in you,
well,
Jamie.
exactly. Um, we'll go to our next game. Another victory for Numpties, another victory for the Dwarfs. 3-1 against Goblins here. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, uh, 6 casualties, 3 touchdowns, 5 points from this game, 25 SPP. Before I ask you, because you've had this matchup twice this season, Goblins versus Dwarves. Before I ask you how you approach this kind of game, I'm just going to go to the honors and just check. Uh, Somehow Elliot is not the most experienced team. And I don't know how, because 16 touchdowns, so much SPP from each game, he must be the most brutal. Most P's, 26 casualties. I mean, he's been, quite frankly, he needs talking to. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think I had most beast until this game, so cheers for that. Although I do have, I'm riding high on a couple of the honors. I got most versatile. That would do. I'm beating him there, but
yeah, how do you
yeah, they
approach
are just
dwarves? How do you go for it?
um. Nothing works against dwarves for me. My goblins versus dwarves. Dwarves are a hard counter to goblins, straight out the box, regardless of where you've skilled up or not. They just shut a stunty goblin team down. So I'm just like, it's goblins. I will try a ridiculous thing. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I try and take out key pieces if I can, like the troll slayers. I don't want the troll slayers going for my fanatics, so I will throw things in the way to try and stop that. A chainsaw to a troll slayer is great because they have the weakest armor, but as soon as the wrong dwarf gets in front of the wrong goblin, they just counter them perfectly, and you are the dice will never go the way you want. You'll never end up with the right pow. You'll always get, it's a double down. You've got block. I can dodge out. You've got tackle. So facing dwarves is just try and just hope. Pray to Nuffle is probably the best tactic against dwarves.
I mean, Tom, Elliot has kind of made a bit of a habit of scoring very quickly. His dwarf runners are pretty terrifying skill-wise. Looking at the skills, dwarf runner with sure hands, thick skull, block, and side skip. Dwarf runner with another one with block there as well. And they are scoring readily and quickly. I mean, what can you do?
His dwarf runner's got movement 7 as well. He's got roller skates.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous. Yeah, and that's the sidestep one as well with block. What can you do against that? It's pretty incredible what he's done with that team. But this game just looks like an absolute foul fest. There's fouls going off left, right, and centre, and the goblins just can't catch a break. They get a foul right at the very beginning and knock out one of the blitzers, which is great, and then they just keep foul, and then the next time the troll slayers go, he takes out the fanatic, like you said, Scott. He's gone straight for the fanatic and killed it dead. So, yeah.
The Dauntless. I know they need they strength 3, so they need I think they need a 5 or a 6 to make Dauntless work. But all you have to do with the Fanatic is knock it over. You don't need to break armor. As soon as they knock over, you roll injury, and best case they are KO'd.
Yeah. So and again, he's Goblin team. I think he had 13 at the beginning, but he quickly dispatched a few of them. And then he's on a roll, and then straight away he's got 2 touchdowns within 2 turns, turn 6 and turn 8. So yeah,
I think normally you end up with a target on your back by winning the league. Every coach who's come back the next season has had a big old target on their back for to try and take them out because they are the one to beat. I feel like last season Robert, who was Norse last season, I feel like he had a tiger on his back because he was so brutal in the group stage. And then he had his last group game was much more difficult. Then he went in and he was knocked out in the last 16. Um, Elliot has been kind of this season's Robert and has been ploughing through, destroying everything in his path, getting so many casualties and all this that. I wonder whether Elliot is now the one with the target on his back. I wonder whether has it shifted? Did we all want Elliot to win last season because it was an amazing run, and now we are all terrified of him and want him to be stopped? Have we kind of flipped?
He's done the Chelsea from back in the mid 2000s where they come in with a load of money behind them and they just smash everyone. It's
And suddenly you're like,
so
no, I don't want that anymore. I want,
yeah, no,
yeah,
I don't like this anymore. No, I liked them mid-table, like the
yeah.
plucky little guys, and now they're just smashing everything. So
Playing him in last season, I think I'm very fortunate. I think I was the only person who won a game against him until the final, and he takes risks with those dwarfs on the dodges. His dice just keep rolling, and they just keep rolling well. He did at one point. He dodged 4 times, picked up the ball, dodged out, and then scored in the game I played against him. So luck like that. How can you play against it?
He's got a great record with this team, a really great record. According to Tour Play, he's fourth in the United Kingdom on Tour Play for dwarfs. He's really nailed it. He's terrifying. He's got the money in his treasury to replace players who go. Yeah, he's one to see. Will he come out this year as winner? I mean, other redrafted teams are struggling more than he is, so I think he is maybe looking strong. But he's got some games left to play, so we'll see whether that goes his way or not. 4 games left now, and Tom, we're going to go to your group, not your game yet, but we're going to go to your group. For what is on paper a incredibly impressive victory for the elves over the other vampire team.
Yeah, I heard through Discord that unfortunately biting bats, true to their name, were just biting themselves.
Yes.
And the dice just weren't in his favour, unfortunately.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I was going to try and find the comment where I think even Justin sort of recognised that the result.
Was that the photo of the injury box that I saw on Discord, which was just players on top of players?
No, that was Dave versus Scott, which we'll get to, I think, in a bit.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I can't find the post now, but yeah, he sort of acknowledged that it was.
I've got it here saying it was heartbreaking. That's twice I've beaten vampires now, and both times I felt that it's because their side failed, not because of mine were hot. So this is coming from Justin. Captain just did not behave, and all those failed 2+ passes. At least we both had our full rosters for our next games. So it wasn't the biting by the sounds of things; it was all the failed passes that were causing problems for the biting bats.
Yeah, which I mean, if you lose, if you lose and you fail your bloodlust all the time, it's like, well, this is a team that has bloodlust, and that's a risk that you take. But if you lose and you lose because just every time you try and pick up the ball on a 2 or pass the ball on a 2, and every time you roll a 1, that sucks. Yeah. Comment from one of our other vampire coaches. Vampires hard counter elves because vamps are basically higher strength elves with hypnogaze. So Andy must have gotten quite unlucky, but well done to Justin. Yeah, I think it's a good they're a good kind of counter for each other. And yeah, clearly the other vampire team just getting unlucky with his other dice rolls. Tom, after that result, currently your two vampire teams are your kind of you and the Biting Bats are trailing a bit in your
Yeah.
group. Um, who who do you think you can topple out of Justin or Harrison? Are you eyeing one of them up as where you're going to get your points over the other, or do you think actually it would kind of depend how it goes, but there's options for both?
Yeah, so I've played both now. I've played both Justin and Harrison. Both are exceedingly good players. Looking at, I've got Justin this Friday. He's purposely selected his skills rather than randomizing. He's been very well planned and thoughtful about who's getting what players are having which things. He is exceptionally good. So both of them are going to be hard games. I've yet to play the Biting Bats. So again, I'd be interested to see what that is like. We've got different formats within our vampire teams. He's got 2 more vampires than I have, so that'd be interesting to see how that plays out. So yeah, I've struggled both times against the elves and the orcs. They're tough competitors.
I think it's quite I think this is a tough group to call. Because I think it was even one that I think we were struggling with calling. I think we did put Justin as the one who gets out of this group, and then we were all suddenly shocked when he didn't have the great first result, and sort of were wondering. But yeah, didn't have a great result against Buffalo Biggins, and then suddenly it was like, oh, how's this going to go? Being very humble, Justin, but I'm still got my money on him coming out of this group one way or another. Now I think it's still a good shout for him. Um, Scott, anything on this one that takes your fancy here? Elves and vampires. Um, yeah, maybe it should have been closer, but Justin is a very strong coach.
Yeah, just looking at the CTV because I'm super undercosted. So looking into my next round, that's a massive part for me. But they seem quite even. And yeah, they're both agile. 4-0 one way. That just screams that someone's had a very lucky game, someone's had a very unlucky game, as opposed to they got the floor wiped with them. Like they're both experienced coaches. So a 4-0 is very surprising. And looking at the feed, it just doesn't look like the vampires got much to do on their turns from the look of it.
I think Andy will come back because I think his previous games, I think he was somewhat unlucky to lose to Harrison. I think he felt he played well. Yeah, everyone has a game sort of where things just don't go your way in any respect, and I think hopefully he's got his out the way and can see what he can build going forward. We'll move on. We're down to the final 3, and we are down to Underworld. And we are Underworlds versus Lizards, Cruel Britannia versus the Double Yolks. Sam had a very good pre-season with these Lizards. Had some good results. He beat the Hot Spews in a pre-season friendly 3-0. So he had a really good run. I think he felt he could have got a better result in his first game, which was a 1-0 loss to the Ogres. And then in this game, I haven't. Yeah, I'm surprised by this result, and I wonder whether this result tells us more what a amazing run Underworld are on. Um, Not to take anything away from Nick, it's a phenomenal result. I think it's his best league result ever. And yeah, I this is possibly one of the results I was shocked at most because I thought this was where Sam's points were coming, and it just hasn't been that way.
Yeah, I've played Nick a couple of times, actually in Gutter Bowl rather than Blood Bowl, and he likes to not play it safe. He likes to roll dice, And it's lovely to see that finally, by the looks of things, throwing a snotling has caused him a touchdown. Because I know every time I've played him, he's been lobbing things all over the place. He can't resist it, either eating his own players or throwing them is usually his way of working. So yeah, it's interesting to see. And equally, yes, they went down 1-0 at turn 3, but on the same turn, Bomber Dribblesnot was out of action. Now he can be quite a devastating star player, especially against like a team like the Lizardmen. You can start taking out your skinks and you start having problems.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if that was a blitz or not, because he's clearly gone on turn 3 shortly after the touchdown. Whether he put Bomber on the line, which would be an interesting move, sort of defending to put someone like Bomber on the line. Um, uh, yeah, it would be interesting to see that. It looks like he took Acorn as well. I've got so much time for Acorn. He's one of possibly my favourite star player. If I've got 80k, I'll chuck him on the pitch any day of the week because I just think the chaos you can cause is fantastic. Um, uh, yeah, I think also what's interesting because compared to the other Underworld team, he's gone a lot more Goblin heavy. And the Goblins, I believe it's just the Goblins that have or it's the animosity from the Skaven towards the Goblins. So Scott, Simon's team has gone for very few Goblins. Nick's gone Goblin heavy. Would animosity put you off?
Not. It's the one where it's kind of like a really stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, but only so.
Yeah,
So it's just if the rats want to give the ball to a goblin,
that's it.
it's just yeah, you roll that beforehand.
Well, with the underworlds, the goblins aren't really there to be your ball carriers. Very rarely, I think animosity would come up. Like the goblins are just there to gum down the field, be cheap and annoying in the way, and just stunty dodge out of places to cause more issues. They're just expendable. So that's what I use mine for. So, and it seems work. Clearly, it seems to have worked because yeah.
Even with this result, it's still. I think there's still a lot of games to play in this group. Sam's still got a lot of games to play here. Nick will be feeling good, I think, off the back of this result. Do we? I think it's probably too early to rule either of these two out. They're in a group with two former champions, which was always going to be difficult anyway. Um, the group is currently sat with James and Rich at the top. Uh, can one of these two do enough to at least get in that wild card challenge? Does this result make us worry that maybe it's Underworld who have the best chance of that? And can they get enough points from just from Sam? Can they get points? Do we think is a wild card coming from this group? Because I am not sure.
I don't know Sam that well, and I don't know how well he's played the Lizards in the past. You can't. It's interesting because we made the kind of assumptions about the people who were really good in the last season, but yeah, sure, some of them have done their usual and they're up at the top, but others are kind of struggling, So I think there's still a lot of games to be played. There could be a lot of changes in the points, especially with the wild cards.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There's a swing. There's a swing to come somewhere, and I think there's a shock to come somewhere. Maybe one of
Yeah.
these two can be that shock. Scott, what do you think?
Well, as long as the ogres don't take best stunty off of me, and they're currently ahead of me according to Torplay's statistics. But they've only half the games have been played. Really, there's some people only played 2. So even if you just take, win your next 4, that's 12 just for winning. So double yolks on 12, that would put them top. This whole group could flip based on, dice enough, I guess. But there's some solid coaches in there, some solid teams. But there's, if the dice aren't in your favour, this group could be anyone's. I don't know who's going to come top or bottom. It feels like it's too early to tell based on the games played.
I think the problem I have is last season I kept saying and I'm not allowed to say it this season, but I kept cheering on Harrison, which is why I'm not cheering him on this season, because I jinxed him, and I kept saying that I think he can turn him around. And I love lizards. I love Sam. I would love Sam to turn it around, but if I now start saying I think Sam can turn it around, then I reckon he will be challenging for the spoon. So I'm not going to say it. So we'll see. So we'll just see. We'll just see. Um, On to our penultimate game. I do hope that Scott has hung on for this one. Um, Yet again, Dave Rue showing us being the kind of uh, the person to break the deadlock in this group of death and taking a 1-0 win from this game. Uh, Dave Rue had been sat in that kind of getting a wild spot out of this for a while and has just thrown himself into the top spot in this group. Thrown Tetris Hotspurs down into a wildcard space on a good number of points, a strong wildcard at the moment with a game to play. Um, both teams getting a casualty point out of this one. You know, it was a tough game, and you could also tell
Were they?
something. Um, three casualties for both teams in this one. Um,
Oh, there
and
must have been a regen. Yeah, it looks like there's been a regen.
um, and it it was quite entertaining to watch it because it was 0-0 and you wondered whether it was going to be another draw, and then suddenly in the last few turns it was suddenly foul, sent off, foul, 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 touchdown. It was sort of like, right, we're throwing everything at it for the last few turns. So yeah, a result that something had to give in this game, Tom, and Dave's the one that's broken the deadlock twice now.
Mm. Yeah, it looks like you say. It started off with a lot of casualties and injuries and dead on term 5. So and also the only kind of major injury by the looks of things that Nurgle have done is killed the star player, which really is not that worried really on turn 14. I noticed that Mummy got a movement injury, and looking at the team, he's clearly been sacked and bought another Mummy for the next round, because you can't have a stat busted movement Mummy of like, was it movement 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they get stat busted, there's no point.
Do you have to? I don't know how it works. Would you have to therefore rush to stand up?
Yeah, you would, because surely.
What about
Because tree men have to do that, don't they?
Yeah. Scott is saying, yeah, you'd have to roll a 4 to stand up. So yeah, yeah. So that sacked Mummy seems like it was good then. But I think that Mummy in question, was that Mummy the one that also had a good amount of. Also, I think that was the one that did get some good casualties in the game as well. So to sack that one may be a bit painful. We've got a bit of a report from Dave, which he's put in the chat, which I'll just read through. Scott kicked, landed near the line. Dave failed to pick up. Scott did and ran off with the ball. Dave was able to reduce his numbers and stop him from scoring. Had to be patient, as Dave knew he'd kick to him in the second half. A lot of Scott's KOs didn't come back, so the second half Scott was down on numbers, struggled to move the ball. He then had early dice fails about turn 5, no rerolls left, and Dave was able to pop the ball out and ran down to score. Yeah, and so Scott's team is terrifying, but credit where it's due for only ever randomizing his skills and getting mutations all the way with that team. I think this season he's started to pick the odd one, and when I say the odd one, he's picked a monstrous mouth, a big hands, a block, it looks like, and that's it. He's created a terrifying squad, a really, really terrifying lineup, um, but done so in kind of an interesting and chaotic way, and looked, very, very strong in this group. Um, what do we think then? Do we think that have the inducements been the key to Dave being the one to break the deadlock, or are we just looking at three incredibly strong coaches and it comes down to the smallest dice roll that flips it? Is that what we're looking at here?
I don't really know. It is those kind of things. They're all of those individuals in that group. When at the start of it, we were saying that was almost the group of death, really, wasn't it? And in the initial chat that we had, that everyone had got a chance to get to the top of that. It's great to see that Dave's at the top, because I think all three of us, Chris, that we all said that it was going to be, John and Scott at the top of that group. It must be down to the roll of the dice, because looking at the team value as well, they're all pretty even. There's not a lot of space between them.
It's going to be, it's still going to be tight. There's everyone in that group's got one game left to play. I mean, I would say the money is on Dave to finish top of this group, because he has got to play Jane, who is currently 5 losses from 5, and Scott and John will probably going for as many points as they can so that one of them secures wildcard, rather than if whoever can't secure second place. Scott, who are your top two here? Do you think it will stay as it is? Do you think, I mean, John and Scott have played out 2 draws so far, and they're level on points, and a draw will not change the kind of the swap at the minute. So, who's your top 2?
See, this is a tough group. Like, everyone's close on points. I'd love to see Jane get a win, because that'd be amazing.
Jane throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah, exactly. Just pure chaos.
Mummies.
Just do it. Like, that would be amazing. But yeah, it's too close on points. Even like a 0-0 draw would, put Tetanus and Iceborne on 15, which is what David's on. And then if there was an upset win, all 3 of them finish on 15.
The thing is, it's tricky, isn't it? Because like Dave has been the one to break the deadlock in those big games, so I feel like maybe he deserves top place. But I would love it to finish 15, 15, 15.
Like, yeah, as a neutral, like, I just want that to be just chaos. Like,
it would be beautiful. I mean, Scott himself is saying he thinks it'll be Dave then John, with him in the wildcard spot. I'll be honest, I think I can see it being Dave then John on the wild card, but I think it's going to be touchdown difference. I think it's going to be level on points. There's so little to pick between Scott and John that it's so difficult to call. We'll look at the group in a bit. We've got one game left to come. I know there've been Interbibble games. We're not going to cover them in great detail. We'll have a little look at the Interbibble results before we go, and then once all of the Interbibble first round is done, we'll maybe do a special going through those games. So we'll go to our last game. Tom, you've been so patient waiting to the very last game for your team to come up, again, I'm not allowed to hype Harrison, and I'm not going to. It's not going to happen. But going into this one, Harrison was sitting pretty at the top. You weren't. Are you happy with the draw here?
I am, to be honest. To start off with, we went straight into pouring rain, so I thought it gave me a bit of hope, because the pouring rain is +1 on a pickup. And I'm up against orcs, and I'm kicking to the orcs straight away. I took that fouling mercenary, as well as a team mascot. First time I've taken a team mascot, and that, to me, I'm taking team mascots again.
I'm a convert. I'm a switch. Yeah. I'm absolutely convert for 30,000. I know it's a 5 or 6, but you get it in both halves, and for me it's been about 50-50.
And you can still, if it fails, you still get to use a re-roll as well, which is great. It's almost like pro or leader, almost, or think pro, you lose the reroll. But yeah, it was a really really tough game. I have to take my hat off to Harrison. The way he positions those orcs, it was so difficult. I was hypno-gazing everywhere I could just to try and get through. I think the furthest I actually got into his half was 4 squares the entire game. He played such a close game. I managed to knock him down by a player, so I got a big un blocker straight out with a foul. And then he came back and got me with one of my thralls. But the fact that he was down on a strength 4 player and I had all my vampires just gave me a little bit of hope. Yeah, it was a really really tough game, and it came right down to the last turn. It was Harrison had the last turn. He was 4 spaces away from a touchdown, and he had to do a dodge. And he used up all his rerolls, and he failed the dodge. And yeah, it was such a close game. Like I say, hats off to Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, it looks, yeah, all the stats tell us it's really close. I was going to ask whether there was like, whether we were close to a breakthrough at the end. So interesting to hear that there was one. The interesting thing with orcs is that you think to yourself, oh, I've got to dodge away, and I'm an orc team, and I don't want to. But actually, there's a lot of edge 3 in that team, so it's as scary as a Skaven lineman, isn't it? Because you're in the same position.
Yeah.
So just kind of trying it, it is worth the go. Scott, this group is looking like it could actually build to be quite close. And what it sounds like we might end up getting in this group is a lot of games being played in very quick succession. So it looks like things could change very quickly depending on the way things go. The orcs sort of, actually, you would think that they outstrength the vampires, but actually they don't. They're exactly the same, depending on how many of the big guys you've got. Did you, do you think this? Do you think either of the vampire teams are gonna break through that top ceiling? Just pretend Tom's not here. Just kind of just cover it up. Just cover it up.
Yeah,
The orcs, the orcs having had their kind of jump, a bit of a head start. The vampires being a bit behind. There's enough in those teams to claw back, right?
Yeah, and with minimal games played, there's a lot of points up for grabs. There's a lot of skills and SSP to be earned. There is an argument for if you're not going to get the win, do you just farm the SSP and focus on the next game? Like, with that many games to play, you might just be like, I'll settle for a draw, but I will just farm completions and bits and bobs, focus on the next game. And if you're playing them in short succession, you haven't got time to really plan ahead because it's just like game after game after game. So I'm expecting a lot of random skill ups as people just like dive into the next games. And I don't know, you got 11, 9, 2, and 1 on the points. It does seem like the front 2 guys are running ahead a little bit, but they've only played half their games.
Yeah, this is the thing, because a lot of the other groups we're looking at are sort of looking decided, but there's not many games left to go. There's a whole half a group stage left in this one, which all the results go the other way, and we end up with a really tight group. So yeah, I think either way, it could still completely flip. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think the orcs are the. No, I'm not going to hype him, but the orcs. but the orcs, I think, are the ones to watch because like someone has mentioned, vampires are kind of beefy elves in a way. So you've got 2 vampire teams, elves, and then you've got the orcs are the ones in the group that offer something different. So it's kind of when they come into their games, they're the team that I think everyone else has to plan for more differently than maybe against the others, if that makes sense. So I'm just wondering whether it's kind of the whiplash of elves or vampire elves to orcs and back again. Are depending on the way the fixtures fall, is that going to be the thing that kind of plays it? And does that give Harrison an advantage because he's playing 3 similar teams to plan compared to the rest of you. I don't know.
Potentially, because I played Orcs last season, and the one thing that you can always rely on is their armor. Yeah, you can knock them over, but they'll just come back up the next time.
Yeah.
Because trying to get a 10, it's pretty difficult. And I have to say, my dice were incredible. I was rolling 6s and 5s, unfortunately all at the wrong times, but it was all on my bloodlust, was all 6s and 5s. But the fact was that they are so reliable. I think that's the key thing with Orcs. The stats are reliable. You know what to do with them. You don't have to roll a lot of dice. And as I say, Harrison was positioning his Orcs in such a great open cage formation. He'd positioned it all so that I was like, okay, well, I have to use 2 vampires to hypnogaze 2 orcs just to get through that kind of scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, beefy armor in that team. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how the fixtures fall and who comes out on top there. Certainly, like we said, it's only halfway through, so all to play for in that group still. That's our last game. I've now got a bunch of stuff I'm going to throw at people. We're going to go through the groups, then we're going to go through the wild card, how that looks, and then I am just going to let people know of what tournaments are coming up this year, because there's so many that are coming up. That we want as many people to play in as many Blood Bowl games as possible. So want to highlight some of the ones from people within the league that are going on. So we'll look at the tables first. So Johnson Group is pretty much decided. Scale Marys and Bitey Ducks going through. Fink Mob currently taking a wildcard spot on 9 points. Sadly, Daryl is out at the moment, but he could still determine Fink Mob's fate with their last game. Bifford, Worldjed Berserkers and Flumps guaranteed to qualify from that group. Odin's Ravens do have one game left against the Dwarves that they could use to get themselves possibly into a wildcard spot, so it's not all over for them. Toxic Runners on 7 points in third. They can't get enough points to get a wildcard because they've played all their games. So, yeah, thank you so much for Graham. We hope to see you Rats next season. Sadly, season over for the Rats there. Lots of games left to play in Vermouth at the moment, but that Cruel Britannia win puts them a little bit closer to the top 2. James and Rich currently sitting top there at the moment. Group of Death, 15, 13, 13, everyone with 1 game to play. That's going to be a fantastic group to see. If there is any world scenario where those 4 play their last games at the same time, I will personally try and be down the shop with a person with a camera getting all of the facial expressions from those 3 coaches. So yeah, interesting one to watch there. Buffalo Biggins still sitting top at the minute, having taken 2 points from that draw. Greystone Gladiators on second. That draw puts Batfink up onto third and Biting Bats at the bottom. Lots of games left to play there, so lots to play for. Nixon, Castlevania Bloodthirsters are guaranteed top spot at the moment. Well, not even at the moment. They're guaranteed top spot. They're group winners here. Wordhollow Wanderers clinging on to second, only with 10 points though. So Kid Gloves do not need many points in order to try and get up there. The touchdown difference is quite large, but 5 points would get them a slot in the playoffs, so one to watch there. And in Murdrak at the bottom, Numpty's on 23. The Amazons sadly won't be going forward, so it's third or fourth. Which one of those 2 will get there? Currently, they're both sat on 1 point. We could get a record sort of lowest point scoring qualifier, depending on how results continue to go in that group. So we will keep an eye on that. Looking at the wild card situation then, currently Tetanus Hotspews and Fink Mob are our wild card spots. Tetanus Hotspews on 13 points, Fink Mob on 9, but lots of teams that can still get up there. What do we think, guys? Tetanus Hotspews 13 points. I think that's safe. I don't think Fink Mob are. I think we could get 2 teams on 12, 13 going through. What do you think?
Well, we worked it out that if I won all my rest of my games, I get 14 points. So it could actually I could get to that point on some of them. But no, it'll be an interesting one to see. Like I say, there's a huge amount of games yet to be played, and there's potentially going to be quite a lot of upsets.
Yeah, I agree. It's like some of what was it? Was it 12 was enough last season?
11 got it
It-
last season.
See, that's it's more than that already, isn't it? Like, and with some groups having only 50 to 33% of the games played, like I don't know. I think Scott and the Nurgle have maybe got one. I reckon that's quite safe, but Nuffle decides. So
It's going to be close. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. That's going to be the kind of battle to watch, I think, going into the next few weeks. And tournaments. I wanted to just tell you about some tournaments. This year looks like we're going to have so many tournaments coming up at various points. Interbibble Cup is happening at the moment. We've had a few coaches play some games in the Interbibble Cup. I'm knocked out already. Harrison knocked me out at the moment. Tom is through. I believe Jane's been knocked out relatively recently. In fact, we will just very quickly jump.
I've got David Rue tomorrow, but we're going to the pub, so if it goes bad, I can drown my sorrows. So,
I mean that's the benefit of playing in the pub, definitely.
yeah,
So yeah, looking at it, John versus Scott again happening. Two different teams, but two coaches who have used to placing each other at this point. Justin also has got a game to play here. Rich versus James, becoming a regular fixture at the moment. They've got to play. Yeah, as we can see, Harrison beat me 2-1 to go through. Tom beat Daryl 2-1 as well to go through to the next round. Jane sadly lost 1-0. So we've got some ADBBL representation in there against some of the Ibble guys, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on those. Like I said, once all of these games are done, we'll do a little special run through and we'll have a look at some of those fixtures. Other tournaments we've got coming up, they're Blood Bowl Lives and Suffolk Archives. We've got the Ipswich Classic happening in April. You can get your tickets from the Suffolk Archives website for that one coming up at the end of April. Death on the Demon 2, we will be doing in summer this year, so keep an eye out for that around sort of June, July time. We'll look to do our second tournament at Aardvarks and Dragons for the day. The creepy guy with the ball, I love that logo for the Subterranean, Suffolk Subterranean showcase. That's coming back this year as well in October. Keep an eye for that. And of course, the East Anglian Derby, as many people we want to come to that one as well, because Suffolk, I'll be honest, we let ourselves down. We need to fight back next year. We didn't show up. We need to show up next time. Hundreds of other tournaments happening, of course, throughout in the region and wider. There's a bunch of people going to the Welsh National Championships this weekend. We will look to see what information we can bring you from that. You might get some odd snippets of how the games and updates are going throughout the weekend. So good luck to everyone who is going to that this weekend. Well done to everyone there. And anyone else who's going to a tournament or got a tournament coming up and wants to tell us how they get on, it's great to see how all our coaches get on as they play elsewhere. So, yeah, keep us all updated. And that's it. That's it for today. That was a nice, comfortable marathon, 2 hours of going through 18 games. Tom, thank you so much for joining us as always. Scott, thank you so much for stepping in this week and joining us. Scott, me and you will sit pretty comfy and we'll keep an eye on Tom's fixtures from our qualified armchairs to see how Tom gets on. Thank you everyone for watching. We've had loads of people engaging this week. It's been really great. We'll be back next week as normal and every week from now on, because Christmas is done, so this is Christmas now. Yeah, thank you so much everyone for watching. We will see you all at the next roundup.